This is AMTV in colour.
Hello there everyone, and welcome to part 10 of this series looking at the history and impact of Doctor Who ratings. If you're joining us for the first time, a very warm welcome to you. We hope you stick around for future instalments and check out our previous episodes. But for now, sit back, relax, and join me once again as we delve back into the wonderfully niche world of Doctor Who ratings. Our destination? Season 10. In the last few days of 1972, Doctor Who was gearing up for the debut of its 10th season on television. But before any episodes even aired, the hype around this particular set of stories was building. It would mark the 10th run of adventures since the show began, with many publications citing it to be the show's 10th anniversary. Ironic really, as the season would start transmitting shortly after the show's 9th birthday, and not even reach the 10th. But saying that, Doctor Who always enjoyed a bit of free promotion and chatter amongst the press and the public. And with Jon Pertwee about to go into his 4th year playing the Doctor, this season would cement him as the show's longest running lead at that time. With his previous 3 seasons, the production had successfully established the Earthbound setting, the building of the unit family, the introduction of the Doctor's nemesis, the Master, and brought back classic villains such as the Daleks and the Ice Warriors to complement new menaces, including the Silurians, the Autons, and the Sea Devils. So with Season 10 on the way, and public interest arguably at a new peak, just how on earth would the show fare in the ratings? And what new tricks could they pull out of the bag to keep people watching? Well, for their first trick, it certainly was quite the surprise. The first story from Season 10 is the 3 Doctors. The Time Lord's energy reserves are being drained by a mysterious force within a black hole. Their only hope is to combine the forces of all 3 Doctors to battle an ancient figure from Time Lord history. This story is comprised of 4 episodes, which began airing on the 30th of December 1972 and concluded on the 20th of January 1973. Here are the individual viewing figures for all 4 episodes, and these numbers are exactly what you want to kick off a new season, and for a celebratory opener at that. The peak comes with episode 4, which achieves the highest viewing figures for an individual Pertwee episode yet, bringing in 11.9 million viewers. The remaining 3 episodes also bring in very good numbers, with even the lowest point, episode 3's 8.8 million, still scoring a higher result than many stories had done over the past few years. Somewhat surprisingly, only 2 episodes placed within the top 40 TV programmes for their respective weeks. Episode 2 came in 22nd place, whilst episode 4 takes the show into the top 20, finishing at 17th. With the highest figures for a Pertwee season opener yet, what helped contribute to the 3 Doctors' success in the ratings? The most obvious answer is the fact that all 3 actors who had played the Doctor on TV at that point were going to be appearing together. We get excited even now when multi-Doctor stories are aired, so for the 3 Doctors, the first instance of this, it must have been a fan's dream come true, especially if you'd have been watching the show since the start back in 1963. The story also received, understandably, a lot of promotion. For the 4th year in a row, Doctor Who had its season opener promoted on the front cover of the Radio Times, with a great shot of all 3 actors adorning the page. As well as interviews inside the Radio Times, the 3 stars popped up in various other publications, as well as Jon Pertwee making appearances on other popular programmes, such as Bruce Forsyth and The Generation Game and Pebble Mill at 1, the latter alongside Patrick Troughton. Another bout of promotion came in the form of a short trailer, which aired a few hours before a repeat of The Sea Devils on the 27th of December 1972. These trailers started to become more of a common occurrence during the Pertwee era, and whilst not every story was given one, it made sense that the season opener, and the one featuring 3 Doctors at that, should be given this special treatment. So with all that promotion behind it, how did the competition over at ITV hold up? Well, not so good. For those unaware, back in the day ITV operated on a regional structure, so a programme shown say in London won't necessarily be shown in Yorkshire, just as an example. During the 3 Doctors broadcast, it went up against all sorts such as classic films, quiz shows and American imports, mostly programmes Doctor Who had faced before and come out as the winner. Though to be honest, with the 3 Doctors gimmick proving to immediately draw viewers' attention and interest, I think it's fair to say that the other side didn't stand much of a chance. As the story transmitted, it became clear that the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell, would have quite a smaller role compared to his 2 successors. Many may not have known at the time, but Hartnell was suffering extensively from arteriosclerosis. It diminished his health in a number of aspects, one being that it caused his memory to deteriorate. Whilst he does still appear as the character he originated, He reads his lines from cue cards, which, considering he was a very ill man at this point, you can only commend him for returning to the role one last time, to help celebrate a show that he had helped make a success. The Three Doctors was William Hartnell's last work for television. He would pass away a little over 2 years later, in April of 1975, at the age of 67. Overall, this story attracted an average of 10.3 million viewers, and boy is it nice to see a Doctor Who story average over 10 million again. It was the first time the show had achieved this milestone since The Web Planet, which had aired almost 8 years previously. For the Pertwee era, it's the strongest average thus far, making it the most viewed story overall. Compared to previous season openers, it's a 0.7 increase from Season 9's Day of the Daleks, a further continuation of the boost in figures the BBC were hoping for when they both cast Pertwee as the lead and agreed on a shift to a more earthbound focus. We also have some repeat data for this story. The Three Doctors was selected to be part of BBC Two's Five Faces of Doctor Who season, which showed a classic story from each of the Doctors. Airing on 4 consecutive days between the 23rd and 26th of November, 1981, here are the viewing figures for this repeat, which gained an average of 5.3 million viewers. Whilst this may seem low, and indeed 5 million lower than the initial transmission, do take note that this repeat aired over on BBC Two, a channel which often doesn't reach the same dizzying heights of 10 million viewers the same way BBC One does. Also, all 4 episodes in this repeat made it into the top 20 programmes on BBC Two, showing that even as early as 1981, Doctor Who had potential and pulling power in re-airing classic adventures. The Three Doctors truly celebrated Doctor Who, both in how far it had come since 1963 and in what new opportunities awaited the Doctor, with the conclusion of the story seeing his exile by the Time Lords becoming a thing of the past, his knowledge of time travel returned to him, his ability to roam time and space restored. The story itself may not be seen as the greatest by today's standards, but for many a fan it's a story rooted in nostalgia, importance, and fun. Seeing Jon Pertwee and Patrick Troughton bicker and banter their way through the story is nothing short of charming. It's great to see the unit regulars interact with the second Doctor again, and Omega as the villain leaves such a sizable impact. His place in Time Lord mythology would be expanded and cemented over the next few decades, and seeing our heroes go up against him here is both intimidating and also very exciting. To enjoy this milestone adventure today, you can experience it in the written form via the Target book from 1975 or its audio adaptation from 2010. To watch it, you have the VHS release from 1991 and 2 different DVDs, the initial one from 2003 and a special edition re-release as part of the Revisitations 3 set from 2012. The story is also available on Blu-ray as part of the Season 10 collection box set. The Three Doctors to me holds a very special place, as it was the very first story from the classic era of the show that I ever watched, back in November of 2005. Despite the clunkiness of some of the monsters or set pieces, I was absolutely whisked away as a 9-year-old to this weird and wonderful world of 70s Who. I immediately took to all 3 Doctors, Jo Grant as the companion, the unit regulars, and the villainous Omega. So say what you will about it now, but The Three Doctors is a story that for me, I could never ever let go of.
Now, please, you're only confusing my assistant. Joe, it's all quite simple. I am he, and he is me.
And we are all together, Goo Goo Kichu?
Mm-hmm. What?
It's a song by the Beatles.
How does it go? Oh, please be quiet.
The second story from Season 9 is Carnival of Monsters. On the planet Inter Minor, Vorg and Schörner unveil the Miniscope, a technological peep show full of monstrous terror, and the Doctor and Jo are trapped within its horrors. This story is comprised of 4 episodes, which began airing on the 27th of January 1973 and concluded on the 17th of February. Here are the individual viewing figures for all 4 episodes, and this is a nice strong showing, isn't it? All episodes hold within the 9 million range, the peak being the opening episode, which pulled in 9.5 million viewers. And when your lowest rating is 9 million on the dot, you know your story has done exceptionally well. 3 out of the 4 episodes also made it into the top 40 TV programmes, with episode 3 just missing out, and episode 1 taking the highest position at 29th place. So what helped Carnival of Monsters achieve some of the show's most consistently strong viewing figures? In many ways, a lot of the promotional strength that was given to the Three Doctors was also given to this story. Whilst there was no front cover on the Radio Times, Carnival of Monsters did receive a special short trailer, which aired immediately after the closing episode of The Three Doctors. Also, this story had the appeal of being the first adventure where the Doctor could travel in the TARDIS without it being controlled or on some sort of mission for the Time Lords. For fans who had watched in the black and white era, this certainly would have held some incentive to tune in. Competition over at ITV was once again varied, but many of the shows weren't pulling in numbers even close to Doctor Who. Alongside the onslaught of repeats of shows such as The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and UFO, the biggest hitter came in the form of quiz show Sale of the Century. This show had dented Doctor Who's ratings towards the end of Season 9, but it seems on this occasion it didn't quite pack the same punch. Even when ITV changed up most of its regional schedules halfway through Carnival of Monsters' run, it still didn't take any extra chunks of viewers away from the Time Lord. This story itself is often seen as one of the gems of the Pertwee era, and it's very easy to see why. The characters are all very likeable, some of the design work, particularly inside the miniscope, is fantastic, the Drashigs for the most part are convincing and horrifying, and the whole story has a sense of pace and urgency that Jon Pertwee and Katie Manning carry off extraordinarily well. There is no doubt how strong their bond is by this point either, which will only go on to break our hearts later on in Season 10. But more on that when we get there. Overall, this story attracted an average of 9.2 million viewers, a 1.1 million drop from the previous story. That may be a bit of a sharp decline, but 9.2 million is not a figure to be shrugged at, especially for TV in 1973. It was almost inevitable that after the hype and buzz around the Three Doctors wore off, that part of the audience wasn't going to tune in again. But if anything, the fact Carnival of Monsters kept over 9 million people captivated and interested is fantastic and downright impressive. We do also have some repeat data for this story. Just like the Three Doctors, Carnival of Monsters was selected to be aired as part of the Five Faces of Doctor Who repeat season over on BBC Two. Going out rather oddly the week before the Three Doctors, between the 16th and 19th of November 1981, here are the viewing figures for this repeat, which gained an average of 5.3 million. The average is around the same gained by the Three Doctors repeat of this same season, and like that story too, Carnival also placed in the top 20 programmes for BBC Two, with all 4 of its episodes. Carnival of Monsters is such a joyous story to watch today. It's so nice to see Jon Pertwee play his version of the Doctor, unconstrained by Time Lord restrictions, and what an adventure to kick that theme off with. To enjoy it today, you have the Target book from 1977 and its audio adaptation from 2014. To watch it, you have the VHS release from 1995 and 2 different DVDs, the original release from 2002 and a special edition re-release as part of the Revisitations 2 set from 2011. It's also available on Blu-ray as part of the Season 10 collection box set. If you're trying to get people into the world of classic Doctor Who, this is certainly a story I would recommend as a jumping on point. It's so full of fun, many iconic characters and scenes, and a leading pair who are at the top of their game and are having the most brilliant time of their lives whilst doing it. Without a doubt, one of the quintessential Doctor Who classics.
Good afternoon.
The third story from Season 10 is Frontier in Space. The universe is on the verge of war between humans and Draconians, and the Doctor and Jo are caught in the middle, but other forces are working for their own evil purpose, as the Doctor discovers when he faces the Master. This story is comprised of 6 episodes, which began airing on the 24th of February 1973 and concluded on the 31st of March. Here are the individual viewing figures for all 6 episodes, and sadly numbers have taken another sharp drop, with the bulk of this story holding within the 7 million range. Not necessarily a bad figure at all, but to lose over 2 million viewers from the previous story is an eyebrow raiser to say the least. The peak comes with episode 1, which has a figure more akin to Carnival as it brought in 9.1 million viewers. The lowest point comes with episode 4, which falls 2 million below the peak with 7.1 million tuning in. Only episodes 1 and 6 made it into the top 40 programmes chart, with episode 1 coming in at 32nd place. So whilst these are far from catastrophic numbers, what happened during Frontier in Space to cause viewing figures to drop so suddenly? Well, to start with, the promotional arm wasn't flexing quite as much as it had done with the previous 2 stories. There was no special trailer on TV, and no cover on the Radio Times. There were nice little art pieces for each episode's listing, drawn by the legendary Frank Bellamy, but beyond that, nothing else was really done to push this story in front of the nation. Competition on ITV remained largely unchanged across most regions, with old rivals going up against Doctor Who including Tarzan, It Takes a Thief, UFO, whilst also fighting some new competition including the Beverly Hillbillies, Doctor at Large, and The Big Valley. None of these programmes have been noted for taking any substantial viewership away from Doctor Who, continuing to prove that the Pertwee era of the show had a strong connection with audiences. The lack of promotion against a relatively weak slate of competition is surprising, and considering one of the main villains in Frontier in Space is the Doctor's archenemy, the Master, at that. Although, as wonderful as Roger Delgado is, there were certainly early signs of a Master fatigue going on at the time. Having appeared in every story of Season 8 and then popping up twice in Season 9, there were some viewers who claimed they were getting a bit bored of the villain as Time Lord. A lot of these criticisms seem to stem from people wanting more variety in terms of villains, rather than Roger Delgado's performance. Sadly, Frontier in Space would tragically mark the final time in which Delgado would play the Master. For on the 18th of June, 1973, mere months after Frontier had aired, whilst filming in Turkey, he was killed along with a Turkish technician in a car accident. The chauffeur driving the car, to make up for lost time, drove far too fast, causing the car to spin off a road and into a ravine. Roger was 55 years old. The news of Delgado's death shocked viewers in the UK, but they hit no one else harder than the production team of Doctor Who. For the past few years, Roger had been viewed as one of the family amongst the series regulars, and it's his tragic death that is often cited as being one of the many reasons why the other regulars wanted to move on shortly afterwards. But whilst he never got a final battle with the Doctor on TV, the legacy that Roger Delgado has left with the Master is clear for all to see. He was very much the Doctor's Moriarty, and solidly laid the foundations for all the following Master incarnations to come. Overall, this story attracted an average of 8 million viewers, a 1.2 decrease from the previous story. It's a shame to see a further big decline like this, but once again I can't stress enough how despite that, an 8 million average for a 6-part adventure in 1973 is still very much a success. If you don't believe me, even members of the BBC Programme Review Board were singing this story's praises. The board commented that episode 1 was a good start to another good story. Head of Drama Series, Andrew Osborne, claimed that episode 2 was remarkably good, and Head of Drama Serials, Ronald Marsh, felt that episode 5 had excellent production values. It's no secret, however, that as time has gone on, Frontier in Space is increasingly looked upon as being an overly long, dull, and tedious adventure. The most common joke being that the Doctor and Jo escape one prison cell only to be thrown in another for a good few episodes. And whilst that may be true to an extent, and the story as a whole has a much slower tone compared to many Pertwee adventures, I would argue there is still a lot to love. The Draconian species, both as a society and in terms of their design, are an extremely interesting race. The whole dynamic of the Earth-Draconia War is also explored and expanded, showcasing the brilliant writing talents of Malcolm Hulke, who penned some of the finest and most topical scripts of the early 1970s. To enjoy Frontier in Space today, you can read the Target novel from 1976, which was retitled to The Space War, or its audio adaptation from 2008. To watch it, you have the VHS release from 1995, the DVD version from 2009 as part of the Dalek War box set, or the 2019 release on Blu-ray as part of the Season 10 collection set. Frontier in Space may not be everyone's favourite, but I'd recommend going back and giving it another chance. Pertwee and Manning continue to be on top form, and despite not getting the ending he deserved, Roger Delgado delivers one final fantastic performance as the charming but malevolently evil Master. Oh, and in the last few minutes of episode 6, the Daleks pop up. I wonder if they'll have a bigger presence in the next story.
Right, we'll see who rules the galaxy when this is over. Do not fail the Daleks indeed, you stupid tin boxes.
The fourth and penultimate story from Season 10 is Planet of the Daleks. At the request of the wounded Doctor, the Time Lords pilot the TARDIS to the hostile planet Spyridon. There the Doctor and Jo join forces with a group of Thals to prevent the Daleks from launching a galactic invasion. This story is comprised of 6 episodes, which began airing on the 7th of April 1973 and concluded on the 12th of May. Here are the individual viewing figures for all 6 episodes, and wow, okay, talk about a surprise shoot-up. The first 3 episodes skyrocket over the 10 million threshold, with episode 1 being the peak, with 11 million viewers tuning in. Even the last 3 episodes, which all fall under 10 million, still pull in impressive numbers. The low point of 8.3 million with episode 4 hardly being a sign of failure. All 6 episodes made the top 40 programmes, with episode 1 getting a special note as it took Doctor Who back into the top 10 in nearly a decade, settling at 9th place. So with huge numbers like this, what proved to be so popular about Planet of the Daleks? Well, for starters, like the 3 Doctors and Carnival of Monsters before it, Planet of the Daleks received a special trailer on the day of episode 1's transmission to help promote the story. Funnily enough, the trailer didn't contain any footage from the upcoming adventure, instead using Dalek footage from the previous story, Frontier in Space, presumably to bring viewers back up to speed with what the Daleks were up to. Aside from this, what helped episode 1 achieve its 11 million figure could actually be placed down to what else was airing on BBC One that day. The episode went out 20 minutes later than scheduled due to the boat race overrunning, and following Planet of the Daleks was the ever-popular Eurovision Song Contest. With two major events either side of Doctor Who, it's understandable to assume that many extra viewers would catch the programme, either because they had just enjoyed a good day's boat racing, or because they wanted to see what Eurovision had to offer later on. It's curious how that extra chunk of viewership seemingly stuck around for episodes 2 and 3, before the last half of the story sees ratings fall below 10 million. Did competition over at ITV have anything to do with this? Many regions were still airing repeats opposite Doctor Who, in this case shows like The Persuaders and the Western Bonanza. However, some regions were opting for variety specials in their bid for viewership, but it seems even with stars like Julie Andrews as the headline, Doctor Who still came out on top. Planet of the Daleks is another wonderful off-world adventure for Pertwee's third Doctor. Sporting a very snazzy purple suit, I believe we see some of his strongest scenes in this story. The Daleks also get a bit snazzy too, as a Dalek Supreme joins the ranks, emblazoned in black and gold livery. It's a shame he only appears in the final episode, but I would argue this story is leaps and bounds superior to the previous season's Day of the Daleks. Even if author Terry Nation was slightly going through the motions in terms of the story's plot, often being cited as a retread of his first script for the show, The Daleks, but hey, at least he remembered that the Daleks can paralyze people, aside from just killing them, right?
Wait! Wait! Somebody's still in there.
Save for interrogation. Disabled.
Overall, this story attracted an average of 9.7 million viewers, a 1.7 increase from the previous story. A sharp boost in the upward direction proves that Season 10 wasn't just on a decline after the opening story. This figure places it as the second most viewed story of the season so far, right behind The Three Doctors. The everlasting popularity of the Daleks, appearing in the first script from their creator in nearly a decade, the beautifully realised world of Spyridon, it all culminates in being one of the Third Doctor's most memorable and beloved adventures. We also have some repeat data for this story, coming this time from BBC One. In the 1990s, a time when Doctor Who wasn't being made, one way in which fans could get their fix was from an increasingly growing number of repeats. Most of these came on channels such as BBC Two or UK Gold, but on the odd occasion, Doctor Who would appear on its original channel, BBC One. As such, in 1993, Planet of the Daleks was chosen to represent Doctor Who for its 30th anniversary, and would air on BBC One from the 5th of November to the 17th of December 1993. There was no episode aired on the 26th of November, due to Children in Need, and so that some new Doctor Who, the most canonical Doctor Who story ever, could be premiered. But jokes aside, here are the viewing figures for this repeat, which pulled in an average of 3.6 million viewers. Considering this aired at a time when Doctor Who's popularity was on the decline, and when going up against Coronation Street over on ITV, I would argue this kind of average for a 20-year-old story at that time isn't bad at all. Planet of the Daleks may very well be a greatest hits compilation of past glories, but by God does it pull it off remarkably effectively. To enjoy this greatest hits today, you have the Target book from 1976, and its audio adaptation from 2013. To watch the story, you have the VHS from 1999, as part of a metal Dalek tin set, or you have the DVD release from 2009 as part of the Dalek War box set. Plus you also have the Blu-ray, which forms part of the Season 10 collection set from 2019. Whether you love the Daleks, the dynamic between the Doctor and Jo, the reappearance of the Thals, or everything else in between, Planet of the Daleks does indeed offer something for everyone. It's a fan favourite amongst many, and it's one of the stories from the Pertwee era that I think will always be held amongst the highest regard. Another strong recommendation from me in what is shaping to be one of the most stellar seasons of the show yet.
The responsibility was yours. You have failed. The Supreme Council does not accept failure.
The fifth and final story from Season 10 is The Green Death. When a miner is found dead and glowing bright green in a disused Welsh mine, Unit and the Doctor are called in to investigate. The culprit appears to be Global Chemicals and its mysterious boss, whose sinister plans extend far beyond the small Welsh mining town. This story is comprised of 6 episodes, which began airing on the 19th of May 1973 and concluded on the 23rd of June. Here are the viewing figures for all 6 episodes, and it's such a shame that such an iconic and brilliant story sees the viewing figures crash downward once again. The high point is with episode 1, which pulled in 9.2 million viewers. It was the only episode that surpassed the 9 million mark, with the lowest rating coming with episode 4, which brought in 6.8 million. However, despite these numbers being a bit all over the place, all 6 episodes of The Green Death placed within the top 40 TV programmes, episode 5 taking the highest position, coming in at 15th place. So despite the lower numbers when compared to a lot of season 10, how come The Green Death in many ways was still so successful? It was common knowledge by this point that Katie Manning would be departing from the series at the conclusion of The Green Death. Katie had played the part of Jo Grant for 3 years, and despite becoming one of the longest serving and most beloved of the Doctor's companions, she felt it was time to move on to pastures new. Jo's exit was indeed a big part of the promotion for The Green Death. Katie herself appeared on various TV and radio programmes to talk about her time on the show and to promote her upcoming new venture, Serendipity, a show all about alternative lifestyles and one in which she would host later that year. The competition at ITV continued to change over the 6 weeks The Green Death was on the air. Julie Andrews remained a firm adversary in the schedules, as did the Mike and Bernie show, and for the latter half of the story, the Rolf Harris show. Alongside these were the usual mixture of repeats and American imports, none of which held a massive triumph over Doctor Who, despite The Green Death's lower ratings when compared to the rest of season 10. Also, during its broadcast, we were moving into British summertime, so with warmer weather and the sun staying out longer, less people were at their TVs for 5:50 PM when Doctor Who was on air. The story again is another well-loved classic from the Pertwee era, even if it is playfully referred to as the one with the maggots. But if you look a little deeper, it's far more than just some maligned maggots. The Green Death is a fabulous tale all about how we take our Earth for granted, and when abused, the horrors that can arise from it, all with the little sprinkle of Doctor Who goodness. One of the most memorable scenes, of course, is Jo's eventual departure from the Doctor's side, which is beautifully built up and hinted at throughout the story's 6 episodes. Her departure was commented on by viewers of all ages, and the story as a whole serves as a fitting end and send-off to the bumbling, slightly clumsy companion we all know and love as Jo Grant. Overall, this story attracted an average of 7.7 million viewers, a 2 million drop from the previous story. Sadly, this pits The Green Death as the least viewed story of the entire season. However, a 7.7 million average is far from a poor showing, and it once again shows how loyal vast proportions of the viewership were to Doctor Who during Jon Pertwee's tenure. We also have a fair amount of repeat data for this story. Firstly, The Green Death was broadcast as a 90-minute compilation on the 27th of December 1973, and attracted a huge 10.4 million viewers. This was the 3rd successful Christmas compilation in a row for Doctor Who, partly done to capitalise on the boosted festive audience, but also to promote an upcoming season. Although saying that, this edit went out between episodes 2 and 3 of the season 11 opener, The Time Warrior, which seems like an odd time to show a repeat. But, hey ho, they did what they wanted to in the 70s. Our last lot of repeat data for The Green Death comes from BBC Two in the year 1994. Airing over 6 weeks from the 2nd of January to the 6th of February 1994, here are the viewing figures for this repeat, which came out with an average of 1.2 million viewers. This is quite surprising, even for this period of BBC Two repeats, as other stories around this time were gaining averages of around 2 or 3 million. Still, with increased competition and no new Who on screens, we can hardly bash it too much. The Green Death is a beautiful season finale, with lots of action, captivating monsters, and one of the most heartfelt send-offs in the show's near 60-year history. To enjoy the story today, you can read the Target book from 1975, or its audio adaptation from 2008. To watch it, you have the VHS from 1996, and 2 DVD releases, the original from 2004, and the special edition re-release from 2013. You can also enjoy The Green Death on Blu-ray, thanks to the Season 10 collection set. You hardly need me to recommend this one to you, but if you haven't seen it, make it one of the first on your long list of Who binge watching. I promise you won't be disappointed.
Oh, I nearly forgot. Your wedding present.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Doctor.
So that's Season 10, the 5 stories that comprise it and the ratings that they garnered. With the transmission of Episode 6 of The Green Death, Season 10 was brought to an end, concluding a near 7-month run comprised of 26 episodes across 5 stories. All 26 of those episodes exist today in the BBC archives, and only one of them had to undergo any kind of restoration in order for it to be presented in colour. This was episode 3 of Planet of the Daleks. For many years, the episode only existed as a black and white film print. However, thanks to advancements in restoration technology, colour was able to be restored in time for the story's DVD release in 2009. The technique was chroma dot recovery, where colour information in black and white prints can be brought out and restored in a raw form. This, combined with some manual colorization to get shades and tones looking as accurate as possible, is how Planet of the Daleks Episode 3 was able to be seen in colour once again. Now let's have a look at the story averages for this season. We can see that the highest story average comes from the opener, The Three Doctors, with 10.3 million on average tuning in. It's not exactly a shock horror this story gained the most viewership. I mean, as discussed, having all three actors back for a big adventure is bound to pull even the most casual of viewers in. The lowest story average comes with the finale, The Green Death, which attained 7.7 million viewers. This figure represents a 2.6 million drop across Season 10, but similar to Season 9, which had a similar gap between its highest and lowest, this is by no means a disaster. For The Green Death to average 7.7 million is a positive step forward from the darker days of 60s Who, where stories such as The Smugglers and even the War Games were drawing in less than 5 million viewers on average. Now, as we always do, let's work out the overall average for this season. By combining the average ratings of each story, we can calculate that the average for Season 10 of Doctor Who stands at around roughly 9 million viewers, one of the strongest season averages for the show thus far, second only to Season 2, which averaged at 10.4 million. This 9 million average continues the upward trend of season averages for the Pertwee era of the show. Where Season 7 began with a 7.2 million average, it's remarkable how in a few short years, Doctor Who had been transformed from a show narrowly avoiding the chopping block to being one of the BBC's most highly viewed and praised success stories. Season 10 not only continued Doctor Who's success in the 1970s, but arguably cemented it. It was undeniable that this show, one that had survived for 10 years, was now practically a national institution. The sights of the TARDIS, a Dalek, even the titular Doctor himself were now instantly recognisable to people up and down the country, for both children and adults. The stories of Season 10 also show how the programme is in no way getting stale or slowing down. The Doctor's freedom is restored, taking him back into time and space. It was a perfect mechanic to keep the show feeling fresh and alive with imagination. Whether it's the horrors of the miniscope, the perils on Draconia, or even battling the Daleks on Spyridon, all of it is gorgeously realised, and the production team taking full advantage of the show being in a full colour glory. Most would say the teaming up of the three Doctors was the high point of this celebratory year, but for me, I would argue it's eclipsed ever so slightly by the departure of Jo Grant in The Green Death. Katie Manning has always been instantly watchable and likeable as both a performer and as a person. Watching her say goodbye to the Doctor never fails to bring a tear to both my eyes or to the millions who grew to love her. A perfect end to an arguably near perfect season. I ask this a lot, but after all of the stuff Season 10 had to offer, where on earth could the production team take it next for Season 11? Well, you'll have to join me next time to find out. So those are the ratings details for Season 10. I hope you enjoyed this numerical look back at the show's 10th anniversary year, one that included multiple Doctors, old enemies and new ones to boot, and also a departure fit for a queen. Could you tell Jo Grant was my first crush? If you want to see some more quality Doctor Who content, then I highly recommend Cynical who makes some great videos on so many fascinating topics in Doctor Who's history. If you want to read more about Doctor Who and the making of it, I highly recommend the Complete History series of books, which I used as reference for this video. If you want to keep up to date with this series, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and if you want to see new episodes of this series early, then you can by supporting us over on the AMTV Patreon. Please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and leaving your thoughts on Season 10 in the comments section below. I've been Martyn from AMTV, and we will see you next time for Season 11.